Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mediavine Summer of Live. I am Jenny Guy, your host, and today is August 11th. And if where you live is anything like where I do in Oklahoma, you have reached the place in this wonderful season where the best descriptive adjective for the weather is miserable. Basically, I'm at the point where if it doesn't involve air conditioning or a body of water, I'm out. Like, I'm not going to do it. How are you guys? How's everybody out in the audience? Is it oppressively hot where you are? How are you beating the heat? My guest today is joining me from a beautiful place. It is very far away, but she told me before we got started that it is also incredibly hot where she is. So we are suffering separately, but together, and we're united. She is not here to talk about the weather, though. She is here to help us with something that I think all content creators face at one time or another, which is writer's block. You're staring at the blank page before you. You're mocked by the flashing cursor. Has this ever happened to you? Well, Claudia Tavani believes you can always write more, and she's here to show us how. First of all, hello, Claudia. Welcome. Can you tell me where you're joining us from?
Hi, Jenny. I am joining from Cagliari, Sardinia, and yes, we are in the middle of a horrible, horrible heat wave.
I told her before the episode that I didn't know that you could make Italy sound not 100% appealing to me, but she did it. Congratulations, Claudia.
That's not true. That's not true.
It's one of my dream destinations. But let me read, she's quite an impressive guest. We're so excited to have her. She is a former human rights lawyer and academic who abandoned her career to pursue a life of travel. She currently runs 3 sites, My Adventures Across the World, which launched in April 2015, and the newer Strictly Sardinia and Strictly Rome. When asked if she regrets her career change, she says she's never looking back, which I really can't blame her for that. But she's going to talk to us about overcoming that writer's block and really inspiring yourself to write more. I'm going to share her presentation. If you have questions for her, please drop them in the comments and I will get to those when she is finished presenting. But for now, take it away, Claudia.
Oh, hi guys. So as you know, I'm here to talk to you about how to overcome a writer's block. And in reality, I'm here to talk to you about how you can always write more and find topic ideas even when you are stuck. As Jenny said, I'm a professional blogger. In fact, I'm a professional travel blogger, and I run 3 blogs. And I can tell you that as a blogger, as a professional blogger, I like everyone else, encounter some difficulties in my daily, everyday life. It's a job like any other, and so we each have our strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes we wish we could delegate tasks. Sometimes it can be writing. Sometimes it can be other tasks. But sometimes when we're at the beginning of our career, we don't have the means to delegate tasks to other people. As I said, we each have our strengths and weaknesses. As for any other job, some people in blogging are great at marketing themselves, at networking. They go to a party and they immediately establish working business relationships with other people. They land a deal right there and then. And other people are great at managing their businesses. And then there's people like me that are so at these kind of things. I mean, I manage my business all right, but I'm horrible at marketing myself and even worse at networking. And I think it comes from me being from actually Sardinia, and it's a cultural thing. We have never been good at really selling ourselves and selling our island as a destination, or otherwise we'd be invaded, because it's a beautiful place. And I'm not good at networking. And I think that also comes from me living on an island my whole life. I never had an opportunity to go to parties and meet that many people when I was younger. And so, I just stick to myself. But what I'm good at is writing. I do a lot of that all the time. As Jenny said, I have 3 blogs. The first one I launched in 2015 after a year and a half of constant traveling and abandoning my career in human rights law. And then I launched Strictly Sardinia in May 2020, right at right when the coronavirus was blasting here in Italy, and Strictly Rome was launched in January. So, someone else would say, "Oh, you're crazy launching 2 travel blogs." They're not just travel, but mostly travel blogs in the middle of a pandemic that forces people to stay indoors. How do you find the inspiration? I have the other problem. I cannot stop myself from thinking about content ideas. And another thing I like to say about myself, I'm a lover of nature, hiking, good food, wine, and I'm a cat lady. In fact, you may hear eventually my cat running around behind me. She wants attention, And one thing I constantly consider is whether or not I should open a cat blog. I keep thinking that's a good idea because I love cats. I keep thinking that's not a good idea because, it would be another site to run, but eventually maybe I'll get there. Maybe I'll delegate. Anyways, as I said, I have 3 sites, and in 18 months, I calculated the other day, I published around 430 posts. So if you calculate, that's 1 blog post per working day. Although I have to say, most of the time during the winter months, when it's raining, and especially during the lockdowns, I worked even on Saturdays and Sundays. So that's a bit of a cheat. That's a bit, I was cheating, but that's a lot of content, and I did that on top of updating, and obviously there's all the technical bits. So how can you achieve this? How can you come up with more blog ideas? How can you write more, and how can you push your content forward so that more content, more revenue ultimately, because that's the way I see it. So I have today, it's actually very simple. Don't think of this as an over technical presentation. I won't share anything that you probably haven't heard, but I'm going to put it out there because some people sometimes ask me and they are surprised by how I do it. So I will look into 3 main things and 2 extras. And the first one is how to create, how to come up with brand new blog post ideas, how old blog posts can inspire you to write new blog posts, how you can use keyword searching tools to look for inspiration, how you can look into trending topics, how your friends can help you with that, and even how Facebook and social media are your friends in creating content. So let's start from the very first step 1, how you come up with a blog post idea. I call it from pillar to niche. Why pillar? Because you start with a very generic topic, the classic listicles. You have a travel blog, you write 20 things to do in Italy or 20 places to visit in Italy. That's a pillar content. Same, you have a food blog. You can write about the 20 best dishes to eat in Italy. And, Italy is going to come up a lot in this presentation because that's where I'm from. So, you write 20 best dishes to try in Italy. And then those 20 best dishes are 20 exact recipes that you can write about. And so that's already 21 posts that you have, or 21 places that you can write about. 21 posts because it's 20 places in each post. And so that's it. And so each item in the listicle is a new post. And these listicle posts are not the best ones to write. I mean, they can be quite boring and quite dry, but Google likes them, unfortunately, and even though they're not very creative, and they're fairly easy. They're easy to update. You can add and you can cut as much as you want, and from them, as I said, you can come up with many more extra topics, and then you can, when you're done with this, with niching down, you can continue with other posts on how to do something, or tips. So for example, 20 places to visit in Italy. You write about each place, how to get from one place to the other, how to visit this specific place, tips for visiting the specific destination. Same thing with food, how to maybe you have a post about how to make lasagna, how to make vegan lasagna, how to make healthy lasagna, how to make lactose-free lasagna. You can swing it as much as you want. And the same goes for, even with fruit salads. You can actually write about each single fruit that you have in a fruit salad and where to buy it and what's in season. Again, swing it. Second way of finding a blog topic, a blog post topic. Look at your old posts. And this is something a lot of us have been doing in this throughout this pandemic. And we need to do it regularly as bloggers, because Google likes a good updated post that has new information. And it's good for the ranking of the site to regularly go through an old post and find and add new information or correct information that is no longer useful or available. Say, for example, that you talked about the museum in a post, and the museum changed their opening hours. You want to update that. Or you talked about a restaurant in a post about either a destination or a post about places to eat in a specific place, in a specific destination. You want to write if the restaurant has gone out of business, for example. And so you update the old post. But then when you update a post, you can find a lot of ideas within this post. And I'm gonna show you an example of a post of mine. So I wrote this one. It says 22 May 2020, and that's when it was last updated. I actually need to update it more and better, and I'll show you why. So if you go through the table of contents, you see here that I have a lot of destinations, and even like Colonial Granada, where to stay and where to eat. Leon, where to stay and where to eat. And then if you go down, you have practical information to plan your trip to Nicaragua. And this already that you see here, the practical information, that's a brand new post, how to plan a trip to Nicaragua or what you need to know before visiting Nicaragua. And this bit is actually not strictly relevant to the keyword I'm trying to target, which is things to do in Nicaragua. You can see here. Let's see. And so I can write an entire separate post about how to plan a trip to Nicaragua, things to know before visiting, and then each of these titles, deciding when to visit, arriving, crossing the border, is a new post. So best time to visit in Nicaragua, how to cross the border, is Nicaragua safe, how to move around Nicaragua packing list. And I could continue and write an itinerary. And then, we saw before that we have the where to stay in Granada, where to stay in Leon. So out of just one blog post, I'm gonna go back to my screen now. Just out of one blog post, you can find 7, 8, 10 blog post ideas just from this one. So if you really are stuck, go to your old post, start updating, and you'll see it will come to you easily, I want to say. Finally, and this is another technical thing, remember that keyword searching tools are your friends. So, if you are blogging professionally and you've been doing this for a while, you definitely have to have a keyword searching tool. There's a lot of them out there, Ahrefs, SEMrush, Searchmetrics, Key Search, from budget friendly to more expensive and more expensive ones. There's something that you can definitely find and help you to build, to look for keywords for your contents. So if you have a very generic idea for a blog post, but you're not sure which keyword you want to target, just look for the generic keyword, and you will get a search volume for that keyword. It can be between It can be anything really. And SEO gurus, they will tell you that you need to target a keyword that has between 1,200 and 6,000 monthly searches and a specific, difficulty level. I personally do not care. If I am interested in a topic, I'm going to write about a topic, no matter what other SEO gurus recommend. If I have an idea, I will write about it and disregard the difficulty score, disregard the search volume. I found myself writing for really tiny search volumes and ended up getting thousands of visits for that keyword, because it's also seasonal, because it's also trends change. So if you have the idea, just write it. But this is not helping you in finding more blog post ideas, So say you already have a blog post on things to do in Nicaragua, but you cannot for the life of you find more topic ideas, and you know that you can probably find something to write about this specific destination. Go on your keyword searching tool, punch in the generic keyword, and look for what are called related keywords. And so many will come up. No keyword is too bad, too small, too ambitious. If you think you can write about it, just do it. Don't even think about it twice. So, for example, if I was looking for things to do in Nicaragua, and I hit the related search, related keywords button, and I came up with things to do in Managua, things to do in León, things to do in Granada, which are all places in Nicaragua. And I could go on. Now, let's move into what's a bit more fun and not so technical, how to come up with blog post ideas. My favorite, that's what friends are for. Unless you're a complete loner, and I don't think you are, you definitely will have friends that are working friends within your blogging niche. So I have a couple of friends, Crisula and Margherita, that I talk to basically every day. We spend the day together, even though one is in Greece, the other one is in Milan, and we talk all the time. And sometimes we're stuck for ideas. Sometimes we cannot find a new blog post topic. So we talk to each other, and we tease a topic from talking to them. And sometimes they have an idea, and I think I can write about the same thing but for a different destination. So this is definitely a good way to do it. Look at ask your friends for help. Facebook is your friend too, and I know that some people hate Facebook. I'm not particularly fond of it. A lot of people see it as a distraction, and they never get on Facebook when they're working. I think it can be a bit of a hit and miss depending on how you use it. I mainly use it for business. I hardly share my personal life on Facebook. I think that's I just don't like doing that. I think that's not the space for it. But if you use Facebook in a smart way, you can find a lot of ideas on Facebook. So I'm sure you're a member of a variety of groups. One for all will be Mediavine, and then personally, I'm a member of each and every cat appreciation group on Facebook, but those don't help my business. But then I'm also in a variety of Facebook groups that are relevant to my business. So in this case, I'm in groups that for people that look for information about Italy, and because they want to travel to Italy. But you could be looking for groups that, for example, are for people searching for information about gluten-free recipes or vegan recipes, or Virginia, of all places. And in these groups, people normally ask questions. And if you're hanging out there, you will be able to share your content and your ideas. So for example, if somebody asks in this group for people looking for information for Italy, oh, can you recommend a good itinerary? I'm like, hey, I have one. I click through my blog post and I send the link, and that's done. But sometimes they ask questions, and they ask questions repeatedly, and I don't have a blog post to share, and that's when I know that I need to write something about that. So, for example, in this group, people keep asking the question, do I need to tip in Italy? Do I need to tip in Italy? And every single time I found myself writing an answer, and then I thought, you know what? This question is so recurrent. Probably people need to have a blog post about it that explains everything, and even explains everything from a local perspective. And so there you go. I went and wrote what you need to know about tipping in Italy. And that's the same reasoning you can apply on a variety of things. You know, people can be stuck with gluten-free recipes, and you can maybe find some. So another way of looking for top topics, what's trending. So go on Pinterest or go on Google Trends and see what topics are trending. I am not a big fan of this way of looking for blog post ideas, mainly because I like to write evergreen content, and sometimes this can be seasonal. Usually is, but within that seasonal, you can definitely find something that it's not so strict for a month or a specific time period. Usually, when you see that a specific topic has more searches in a specific month, you will know that is seasonal. But having said that, if you know you can write about some topic that it's particularly seasonal, what's stopping you? You should. It may not bring traffic immediately because it has to rank on Google, but you can write it now and have it live and ranking for next year. Or you'll be very lucky and it goes on Google Discover and you get thousands of visits in a couple of days. And that happened to me a few times, and that was good revenue, I have to say. Or simply you can write it and schedule it for sometimes later when you see it's a better time for publishing content. And last but not least, look at what your competitors are doing. And you know, when I say keep an eye on the competition, I don't mean that you have to write the same things, not at all. Or you can, because nobody owns a keyword, nobody owns a specific destination, or nobody owns a specific recipe. You can, but don't copy, because you know, we all know Google doesn't like that. It will penalize you, it will penalize your competitor, and even if you hate them, you really don't want to do this. It's a horrible kind of behavior. But if you look at what your competitors are doing, you can definitely find a gap that has to be filled, something that they haven't written about, something that the market needs to have, and you can write about that. You can fill in that gap. And there you have many more topics that you can find. Now that you have all these ideas, what do you do with them? Obviously, you need to keep a log of your ideas. You know, I walk around because I have ideas pretty much all day. You know, I walk around with a notebook in my purse all the time. Sometimes when I'm a swimmer, so sometimes I go to the pool, and as I repeat laps in the pool, I keep also repeating myself blog post ideas that I need to write down as soon as I'm out of the pool and I have dry hands. But you know, anything works. As I said, a notebook. But if you want to store keywords or topic ideas safely, you can use Google Sheets, you can use a Google Doc file, you can even email the blog post ideas to yourself. That's what I do when I just have my phone with me. You know, here, my phone is my friend. I send an email to myself. Next time I'm on my email and I'm on my desk, I can just transfer it somewhere else. I sometimes even just write the title of blog posts and save them as drafts, so I can go back to them when I have more time. And I like to go over this list of post ideas occasionally. sometimes just so that I can cross over whatever I've written about already, and sometimes just looking at the list of things I need to write about. And I can write about, I get even more blog post ideas, and it's a never-ending thing. And then once you have it, you can decide the order in which you want to publish, what you want to prioritize. Even sometimes you may want to leave it for a different time. It's just as long as you have it down, it will stay with you, and it's kind of like a safety net, that you can use. Do you have any questions? Because this was the end of everything I had to say for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for those tips. And then in addition, thank you for those beautiful pictures of
that's Sardinia.
It's stunning. Okay, if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the comments, and we will be sharing Claudia's presentation as well with you guys, so you don't have to worry about taking notes, as always. I actually wanted to ask you a follow-up on a couple of things that I heard you say that I wanted to know more about in the presentation. So you talked about creating basically a new post every single day. And how many posts a month are you creating on average for your website? And how do you balance the creating new content with updating old content?
So as I said, I have 3 sites. On the main site, My Adventures Across the World, I publish between 3 and 4 posts per week. So that means I have, I'm horrible at math, but
Same.
I have between 12 and 18 posts per month, and that's on My Adventures Across the World. On Strictly Sardinia, I try to and stick to 2 per week. There have been weeks when I was close to reaching Mediavine target. Yay! So I was like, more content, and I was posting 4 blog posts every day. Every week.
Whoa.
Not every day, but every day it was a brand new blog post, and they don't have to be too long. Depending, sometimes I write 3,000 words, sometimes I write 1,000, 1,200. So they're not always the same length. So that means 8 to 10 posts per week on Strictly Sardinia, and I try and keep the same schedule for Strictly Rome, so that I keep producing them. And I forget the second part of the question. If I prioritize writing new over updating, I try and do a little bit of both at the same time, especially because updating gives me idea for new blog posts. So that's why I try and do it at the same time. Lately, I want to say the last month or so, I've been more into publishing new content, specifically because I want some certain content that I have to rank before the winter time, when the destination I'm writing about at the moment is going to be trending again, because it's more like a winter destination. So lately I've been focusing on that, but I think as soon as I'm currently in the middle of a migration from one host to another, and so I kind of like my sites are held ransom. But as soon as I have them with me again, I will be resuming updating.
Do you see a big impact when you are creating more content in terms of your traffic?
Oh my gosh, yes. So with the main site, I noticed that I was, and obviously all the numbers I'm giving are pre-pandemic, but I was stuck at 60,000 monthly page views for a long time. And then I started publishing more regularly, like twice per week. And then I increased to even 3 times per week. And in less than a year, I reached 300,000 page views. It increased dramatically, and the same goes for the other sites. I mean, obviously, the more content you have out, the more content ranks, the more page views you get, which means you can get into Mediavine. You can make more ad revenue. And also,
sorry, go ahead.
And also, when you have more content on a specific niche within your blog, you establish yourself as an authority for that specific thing. And so chances are that all posts are going to start ranking together.
How long does it, you mentioned that you're creating some new content now that you're wanting to see rank in the winter. So about how long do you start to see some traction with things in Google Analytics?
You know, I try not to obsess with keeping track of, especially as when a blog post is fresh and new, but I want to say a month is already enough to get some traction. And I normally realize this because after about a month that I've published a post, I'm going to start getting, people emailing me, asking me to place links, which I never do, but they're going to ask either that or ask me to join some affiliation programs. And this is with the main site. With the Sardinia site, I rank within weeks. And I think it's because the competition is less for such a niche destination. So it's easier for me to rank. With the Rome site, it's taking me longer because there's more people writing about Rome. So I would say a month at least is needed in my experience. But
that's real helpful.
I may be completely wrong.
No, you're definitely not wrong, because it may not be everybody's experience, but it's definitely accurate for you. We have a question from Kimberly Coleman. She said, wow, that is a lot of content across all your blogs. How many hours a week do you write?
You don't want to know. Okay, so first of all, it gets to the point at times that I have people helping me. I have the ideas, I do the research, but I have people writing down what I need. But I work every day. During the winter, I work 10, 12 hours per day. Wow. And I want to say at least 6 days a week, sometimes 7. In the summertime, because it's Sardinia and you've seen the beautiful beaches we have, I slow down a little bit, and take some more time off just to enjoy, the beaches and the nature. But I write a lot. I work a lot.
I don't blame you for taking some extra time off during the summers. That is a no-brainer. So you mentioned that keyword tools are your friend. Do you have any favorites that you've used or ones that have been more successful for you over the course of your career?
I use key search. I think most of my friends in the same industry use key search. There was a point where I was using as a trial search metrics. I found search metrics is probably more accurate, but also a bit more difficult for me to use, and also much more expensive. It was a trial, so I was not paying, and I used it for about three or maybe 6 months. But overall, I find key search is not as accurate, but it's very budget friendly, very easy to use. I got used to it, so I use that.
Fantastic. I'm going to I've got one more question for you since we're about out of time here, but I'm going to have you tell everyone, if they're feeling stumped, what is the first thing they need to do? And I'm going to have you think about that while I make a couple of announcements. So one moment, guys, next Wednesday is our Summer of Live finale. It is hard to believe we are already here. It is the end of summer, and I could not be more excited about our episode next Wednesday. It is the 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We will have Mike Pearson of Stupid Simple SEO and our own CEO, Eric Hochberger. We are doing a Mythbusters SEO edition. We are going to talk about all the common wisdom that's out there and the best practices, and we are going to just dissect it all and take your questions and really have a wild SEO extravaganza. For today, we are going to share Claudia's presentation in the comments so that you guys can follow up and connect with her. Also, there's links to her blog in there. There's some great additional resources so that you guys can share these resources with each other and with yourself, and don't worry about taking notes. And Claudia, tell us what to do. What's the first thing that you recommend doing when you get stumped?
But I assume by stumped you mean stuck?
Stuck, or yeah, writer's block. You're not able to write. Yep.
Don't punish yourself. That's the key. Don't overthink it. Take a step back. Maybe you actually do need a break. Maybe go out, have a glass of wine with your friends. I love swimming, so I train at the pool. I train almost every day, so that definitely helps me kind of like release the tension that is blocking me. But usually do whatever makes you feel happy and relax, because sometimes it's just a matter of being very tense, and sometimes it's just we have so much bottled up that we cannot let it go, we cannot let it out.
That is excellent, and we can be our own worst enemy, particularly when we're beating ourselves up.
100%.
Okay, guys, one last thing before we say goodbye, and thank you to Claudia, and we'll see you next week. As I said, we are wrapping up the Summer of Live, which means Teal Talk Season 4 is about to start, and we want you to apply to be a guest. We are looking for all the topics on anything that could possibly be relevant to content creators today. We are open on to people, niche, any of that. Bring your topics to us. We will go ahead and share that link in the comments so that you guys can submit your ideas, and be thinking, put your thinking caps on about what expertise you can share with our audience. In the meantime, Claudia, have a wonderful evening, and everyone else, have a great rest of your afternoon.